The stars had never looked so cold. Commander Thyravel stood at the bridge of the endless hope, her four-fingered hands gripping the railing until her knuckles turned white. Through the observation window, she could see the other 11 ships of her convoy, 12 vessels. In total, 12 fragile shells of metal, carrying everything that remained of her people. 40,000 Kiri souls, that was all. 40,000 survivors from a world that once held 9 billion. Velar Prime was gone. She had watched it burn from orbit 3 weeks ago. The Dominion fleet had arrived without warning, without mercy. Their weapons had turned cities to glass and oceans to steam. The lucky ones died in the first hour. The unlucky ones lived long enough to understand what was happening. Thyra had been lucky in a different way. She had been commanding a patrol ship at the edge of the system. When the attack began, she had gathered what civilian ships she could find and ran. There was no fighting back. There was no heroic last stand. There was only running and hoping and watching her home world shrink to dot of fire in the darkness behind them. Now they drifted at the edge of the Kesson Nebula, swirling mass of purple and gold gas that stretched across half the sky. The nebula was supposed to be their salvation. Its radiation would hide them from Dominion sensors. They could slip through and emerge on the other side, far from Dominion space, far from the war that had already been lost. But the convoy was dying, Commander, said Jeff, her chief engineer. He was young, barely 20 cycles old, with fear written across his gray-scaled face. The wandering star has lost main power. They are running on emergency batteries only. 6 hours, maybe 7 before life support fails. Thyra closed her eyes. The wandering star carried 8,000 refugees, families, children, elders who remembered a time before the Dominion's shadow fell across the galaxy. What about the other ships? She asked. The Dawn's promise is venting atmosphere from a hull breach. They have sealed the damage section, but they lost 200 people. Jeff's voice cracked. The Silver Wing has engine damage. They cannot maintain speed. If we do not slow down, we will leave them behind. And if we slow down, Jeff did not answer. He did not need to. Thyra turned to face her bridge crew. There were 12 of them, all that remained of her original crew of 60. The others had died at Velar Prime or in the desperate escape that followed. The ones who remained looked at her with exhausted eyes, waiting for orders, waiting for hope, waiting for something she was not sure she could give them. Send repair teams to the wandering star, she said. Take whatever we can spare from our own systems, power cells, life support, filters, anything. The Dawn's promise needs to redistribute their passengers to other ships and tell the Silver Wing, we are not leaving anyone behind. We slow down, Commander, said Mira, her tactical officer. If we slow down, we will not reach the nebula before. No, Thyra cut her off. I know what is behind us, but we do not abandon our people, not ever. That is what separates us from them. The bridge fell silent. No one argued. They all knew what was coming. Thyra walked to the sensor station and looked at the display. Behind them, still hours away, but closing fast, were 18 points of light. 18 Dominion warships, hunting them like predators chasing wounded prey. The Dominion did not take prisoners, not really. They called it processing. They would strip the refugees of everything: useful technology, resources, labor. and then dispose of what remained. Thyra had seen the processing camps on occupied worlds. She had seen the mass graves. She had promised herself she would die before she let her people face that fate, but dying was easy. Saving 40,000 people was hard. Send another distress call, she ordered, broadcast on all frequencies. Tell anyone listening that we need help. Tell them where we are, what we are facing, everything. Ren, her communications officer, hesitated. Commander, we have sent 17 distress calls in the past week. No one has answered. The Galactic Accord has declared neutrality. The Vet Confederacy has closed their borders. The Syndicate worlds are too far away. No one is coming. Send it anyway, but send it anyway. Thyra's voice echoed across the bridge. She took a breath and forced herself to speak more softly. I know no one is coming, Ren. I know we are alone, but I will not let my people die in silence. If this is the end, then the galaxy will hear us. They will know what happened here. They will know we called for help and no one answered. History will remember their cowardice. Ren nodded slowly and turned back to his console. His fingers moved across the controls, composing the message that would go out into the void. Distress call transmitted, he said quietly, repeating on all channels. Thyra watched the sensor display. The Dominion fleet was getting closer. The next few hours passed like a slow nightmare. Thyra moved between ships, coordinating repairs, calming frightened civilians, making impossible decisions about resource allocation. Every choice felt like choosing who would live and who would die. On the wandering star, she held the hand of an elderly woman whose husband had died during the escape from Velar Prime. The woman did not cry. She had no tears left. She simply looked at Thyra and asked, will we make it? Commander, Thyra wanted to lie. She wanted to promise safety and hope and a future where this nightmare would end. But she could not force the words past her lips. I do not know, she said. Instead, but I promise you this, I will fight for you until my last breath. We all will. The old woman smiled sadly. That is enough, child, that is enough. Thyra returned to the endless hope as the convoy finally began moving again. The Silver Wing was limping along at reduced speed, and the entire convoy had slowed to match. They would reach the nebula in 14 hours. The Dominion fleet would reach them in 6. There would be no escape. Thyra called her senior officers to the bridge for a final briefing. They gathered around the tactical display, their faces grim. Here is our situation, Thyra said, gesturing at the holographic map. Dominion fleet consists of 18 warships, 4 heavy cruisers, 10 destroyers, 4 interceptor carriers. They have enough firepower to destroy our convoy 100 times over. What do we have? Asked Kath, her security chief. 3 patrol ships with light weapons, 2 cargo haulers that we have armed with mining lasers, and 9 unarmed civilian transports. Thyra paused. We have no chance of winning a battle. We all know this. The officers exchanged glances. No one spoke, but we can buy time, Thyra continued. The patrol ships and the armed haulers will form a rear guard. We will engage the Dominion fleet and slow them down as long as possible. The civilian ships will continue toward the nebula at maximum speed. You are talking about a suicide mission, Mira said quietly. Yes, I volunteer, Keth said immediately. My ship, the Storm Chaser. We will be part of the rear guard, so Will the iron resolve? Added another voice, then another, within moments. Every combat-capable ship had volunteered for the rear guard. Thyra felt something tighten in her chest. Pride maybe, or grief, she was not sure. Any more, thank you, she said, all of you, but the endless hope will lead the rear guard. I will not ask anyone to do what I am not willing to do myself. No one argued, they all understood. The next few hours were spent in frantic preparation. Weapons were charged. Shields were reinforced with whatever spare power could be found, and final messages were recorded. Thyra watched crew members embrace loved ones on other ships via video calls. She listened to parents saying goodbye to children. She heard promises to meet again in the afterlife that their people believed in. She did not record a message herself. She had no one left to send one to. When the Dominion fleet finally appeared on visual sensors, Thyra was standing on the bridge of the endless hope, her hand steady, her heart cold. All rear guard ships form up on my position, she ordered. Civilian convoy proceed to the nebula at maximum speed. Do not stop, do not look back. The convoy split apart. 9 ships accelerated toward the distant purple glow of the nebula. 5 ships turned to face the oncoming darkness. The Dominion fleet was beautiful in a terrible way. Their ships were sleek and elegant, with curved hulls that gleamed like polished obsidian. They moved in perfect formation, 18 instruments of death, arranged in a pattern that spoke of absolute confidence. A transmission came through. Thyra accepted it, and a face appeared on the main view screen. Dominion commander was a Veth, a tall, pale creature with 6 eyes arranged in a circle around its face. It smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Commander Sun, it said, I am Fleet Admiral Sexthrin of the Dominion 3rd Expansion Fleet. I see you have chosen to make a stand. How noble, how pointless. What do you want, Admiral? Thyra asked, keeping her voice flat. I want you to surrender. Order your convoy to stop, power down their engines, and prepare for processing. If you comply, I promise the processing will be quick. If you resist, we will destroy your military ships and take the civilians anyway, but we will make the processing much less pleasant. Thyra stared at the 6-eyed face on her screen. She thought about the old woman on the wandering star. She thought about the children sleeping in crowded cargo holds. She thought about her home world burning. I have a counter offer, she said. Turn around, leave this sector. Let my people go. The Dominion admiral laughed. It was an ugly sound, wet and rasping. And why would I do that? Because if you do not, I will make you regret ever being born. The admiral stopped laughing. Its 6 eyes narrowed. You have 5 ships against 18. You have no support, no reinforcements, no hope. The galaxy has abandoned you, Commander. The Galactic Accord hides behind their treaties. Other species cower in their corners. No one is coming to save you. Thyra smiled. It was a bitter smile, full of rage and sorrow. Maybe not, but I will teach you something today, Admiral, something your Dominion has forgotten in all your years of conquest. It does not matter how big your fleet is. It does not matter how powerful your weapons are. When you corner a wounded animal, when you take everything it has, when you leave it nothing to lose, that is when it becomes the most dangerous thing in the universe. She cut the transmission. All ships, she said calmly, weapons free. Target the lead cruiser. Fire at will. The 5 ships of the rear guard opened fire. It was not much. Their weapons were weak, their shields were failing, and they were outnumbered nearly 4-1, but they fought with a fury that surprised even Thyra. They dodged and weaved through the Dominion formation, landing hits wherever they could, drawing fire away from the fleeing convoy. The Iron Resolve was the first to fall. A Dominion cruiser caught it with a full broadside, and the small patrol ship vanished in a ball of flame. Thyra watched it die on her sensors and forced herself to keep going. Stormchaser managed to take down 2 Dominion interceptors before it was overwhelmed. Keth's final transmission was just 2 words for Veeler. One by one, the rear guard ships fell. The 2 armed haulers lasted longer than anyone expected, their mining lasers proving surprisingly effective against the smaller Dominion ships, but eventually they too were destroyed, and then only the Endless Hope remained. Thyra's ship was burning, half her crew was dead, her weapons were nearly depleted, and her shields were gone, but she kept fighting, kept moving, kept drawing the Dominion fleet away from the fleeing convoy. It was not enough. She watched on her sensors as a group of Dominion interceptors broke off from the main fleet and accelerated toward the civilian ships. They would reach the convoy long before it reached the nebula. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Commander, Wren shouted from the communication station. I am detecting something strange. There is a signal coming from the nebula. The convoy. No, Commander, it is coming from deep inside the nebula, and it is not Kurtha. It is I. Do not recognize the language. Wait. His face went pale. The translation matrix is identifying it. It is Terran. Thyra turned to stare at him. Terran, that is impossible. The Terran are extinct. They have been silent for centuries. I am telling you what the sensors say. Commander, it is a Terran signal. Someone is in there. And he paused, listening to something in his earpiece. They're asking if we need help. The Dominion fleet detected the signal too. Thyra heard Admiral Sexthron's voice crackle over the open channel, filled with contempt. A human ship. Those primitive animals, we thought they had all died out. Let them come, Commander. We will add their wreckage to yours. Thyra looked at the sensor display. Deep within the purple and gold clouds of the Kessin Nebula, something was moving. Something big. Respond to the signal. She ordered. Tell them yes. Tell them we need help. Tell them everything. Wren's fingers flew across his console. Message sent. For a long moment nothing happened. The Dominion interceptors continued toward the convoy. The main fleet continued toward the Endless Hope. The nebula swirled in silence, and then the silence broke. Every sensor on every ship in both fleets screamed at once. Mass readings spiked to impossible levels. Energy signatures blazed like newborn stars. Something was coming out of the nebula, something ancient, something powerful, something angry. The Dominion Admiral's voice came over the channel again, but this time it was not contemptuous. It was confused, uncertain, perhaps even afraid. What is that? Thyra watched her sensor display and felt something she had not felt in weeks. Hope. I do not know, she whispered, but I think our message was heard. The nebula clouds parted like curtains being drawn back from a window, and through that gap, rising from the void like a monster from the oldest stories, came a ship. It was enormous. It was brutal. It was covered in scars from battles that had been fought before. Thyra was born, and on its hull in letters that could be read even from this distance were two words: UEs. Unyielding, the humans had come. Ship that emerged from the Kessin Nebula was like nothing Thyra had ever seen. She had studied warship designs from across the galaxy. During her years at the Karathi Naval Academy, she knew the elegant curves of vet battle cruisers, the geometric precision of syndicate destroyers, the organic shapes of the ancient Tholian vessels. Every species built ships that reflected their nature, their values, their aesthetics, their souls. This ship had no elegance, it had no grace, it was a brutal thing, all sharp angles and heavy armor and weapons that bristled from its hull like thorns on a wounded beast. Its surface was scarred with the marks of countless battles, burn marks from plasma fire, impact craters from kinetic rounds, patches of hull plating that did not quite match the rest. This was a ship that had seen war, real war, the kind of war that left marks on metal and crew alike, and it was massive. The Unyielding was easily 3 times the size of the largest Dominion cruiser. It should have been impossible for such a massive vessel to move with any speed, but it glided through space with a smoothness that suggested engines far more advanced than its brutal exterior implied. On the bridge of the Endless Hope, Thyra's crew stared at the viewscreen in stunned silence. That is a human ship, Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought the humans were gone. Everyone said they were extinct. Everyone was wrong, Thyra replied. She did not take her eyes off the approaching vessel. Ren, what do we know about the Terran? What does the historical database say? Ren's fingers moved across his console, pulling up ancient records. Very little, Commander. The Terran humans were a minor species from a remote arm of the galaxy. They achieved faster than light travel, approximately 300 galactic standard. Years ago, they established a few colonies, made contact with several other species, and then he paused, reading. Then they went silent. What does that mean? It means they stopped communicating. Their transmissions ceased. Their ships stopped appearing in known space. Galactic Accord sent a survey vessel to their home world about 200 years ago, but it found nothing, just empty stations and abandoned colonies. Most historians assumed they had destroyed themselves in a war or fallen victim to some disaster. The official classification was extinct species. No further contact required. Thyra frowned. Extinct species do not build warships like that. No, Commander, they do not. The Dominion fleet had stopped its advance. All 18 warships hung motionless in space, their weapons still trained on the Karathi convoy, but their attention clearly focused on the new arrival. Thyra could imagine the confusion on their bridges. The Dominion had spent centuries conquering the galaxy, and they had done so by knowing everything about their enemies. They had databases full of weaknesses, tactics, vulnerabilities. They knew exactly how to defeat every species they encountered. They did not know anything about humans. Admiral Sexthron's voice came over the open channel. The contempt was still there, but now there was a note of uncertainty beneath it. Human vessel, you are interfering in Dominion affair. This convoy belongs to us. These Karathi are property of the Dominion Empire. Withdraw immediately or you will be destroyed. For a long moment there was no response. Then a new voice came over the channel. It was a female voice speaking in galactic calming with an accent that Thyra did not recognize. It was calm, steady, and utterly without fear. Dominion Fleet. This is Captain Alina Reyes of the Terran Alliance vessel. Unyielding, I am here to respond to the Kurthai distress call. You have no authority here, human. Admiral Sexthron snarled. The Karathi are not your concern. Leave now or share their fate. I was not asking for permission. The channel went silent. On Tyra's sensor display, she watched the Unyielding continue its slow advance. It moved between the Dominion fleet and the Karathi convoy, placing itself directly in the line of fire. Commander Wren said, "The human ship is hailing us directly. Put it through." The view screen flickered and Thyra found herself looking at a human face for the first time in her life. Captain Alina Reyes appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, though Thyra was not sure how long humans lived. Her skin was brown. Her hair was black and pulled back in a tight braid, and her eyes were dark and fierce. She wore a uniform that was simple and functional, dark gray with minimal decoration, designed for practicality rather than ceremony. Behind her, Thyra could see the bridge of the Unyielding. It was not like any bridge she had ever seen. There were no elegant displays, no comfortable chairs, no soft lighting. It was a war room, filled with hardened screens and armored consoles and crew members who looked like they had been fighting their entire lives. Commander Velen, Captain Reyes said, "We received your distress call. My ship is here to escort your convoy to safety." Thyra felt her throat tighten. After weeks of silence, after 17 unanswered calls, after watching her world burn and her people die, someone had actually come. Captain Reyes, she managed. "I do not understand. Why are you here? The humans we thought you were gone. No one has heard from your people in centuries. Why would you risk your ship for us?" Reyes was silent for a moment. Something flickered across her face, an emotion that Thyra could not quite read. Pain, perhaps, or memory. "We have been watching," Raya said finally. "For a very long time. We have seen what the Dominion does. We have seen the worlds they burn, the species they enslave, the civilizations they crush. We have seen it all." Her jaw tightened. "And we remember what it feels like to call for help and hear nothing but silence." Before Thyra could respond, a new alarm blared across the bridge. Dominion fleet was moving again. "Commander," Mira shouted, "Dominion is powering weapons. They are targeting the human ship." On the view screen, Captain Reyes glanced at something off camera and nodded slightly. When she looked back at Thyra, there was something cold in her eyes, something dangerous. "Get your convoy moving, Commander. Head for the nebula. We will handle the Dominion, Captain. There are 18 warships. You are one vessel. Even a ship as large as yours cannot." Commander Reyes cut her off gently but firmly. "I appreciate your concern, but you do not know what we have become. You do not know what we are capable of. Just get your people to safety. That is all I ask." Transmission ended. Thyra stood frozen for a moment, torn between hope and disbelief. Then she shook herself and turned to her crew. "You heard her. All ships maximum speed to the nebula. Do not stop for anything." The convoy began to move. The 9 civilian ships accelerated toward the purple gold clouds ahead, their engines straining with the effort, the endless hope barely functioning after the earlier battle limped along behind them on the sensors. Thyra watched the Unyielding advance toward the Dominion fleet. It moved slowly, almost casually, as if it had all the time in the universe. They are insane, Mira said quietly. One ship against 18. It does not matter how big they are, they will be destroyed. Thyra did not respond. She was watching the sensor display, trying to understand what she was seeing. The readings from the unyielding were strange. The ship's power output was far higher than any vessel its size should be able to generate. Its weapons were giving off energy signatures that did not match any known technology, and there was something else, a faint radiation pattern that her sensors could not identify. What had the humans been doing all these centuries? What had they built? In the silence, the Dominion fleet opened fire. 18 warships unleashed their weapons at once. Plasma beams, kinetic rounds, and missile volleys converged on the unyielding from every direction. It was enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble. The unyielding did not slow down. It did not try to evade. It simply raised its shields and kept advancing. The Dominion weapons struck the human ship's shields and stopped. They did not penetrate. They did not even seem to strain the shields. Energy simply dispersed across the barrier like water hitting a stone wall. Impossible, Mira breathed. No shields are that strong. The unyielding returned fire. Thyra had seen many weapons in her years of service. She had seen plasma lances that could cut through starship holes. She had seen kinetic accelerators that could punch holes through mountains. She had seen missiles that could level cities. She had never seen anything like what the unyielding unleashed. The human ship's weapons were things of nightmare. Rail cannons that fired tungsten slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. Energy weapons that burned with a cold blue light she had never seen before. Missiles that seemed to ignore point defense systems entirely, weaving through defensive fire with an intelligence that suggested they were thinking for themselves. The first Dominion cruiser died in seconds. The unyielding's rail cannons punched through its shields as if they were not there, tore through its hull from stem to stern, and left it a drifting wreck before its crew could even understand what was happening. The second cruiser followed moments later, then the third. The Dominion fleet scattered. Their perfect formation broke apart as captains tried to escape the slaughter. Some tried to flee, some tried to fight back, some simply froze, paralyzed by fear they had never known before. None of it mattered. The unyielding moved through the Dominion fleet like a predator through a herd of prey. It was not fast, not compared to the smaller Dominion ships, but it did not need to be. Its weapons had range and power that made evasion meaningless. Its shields absorbed everything the Dominion could throw at it, and its crew knew exactly what they were doing. Thyra watched the battle unfold on her sensors and felt something she did not have a name for. It was not just relief. It was not just gratitude. It was something deeper, something almost frightening. This was what humans were capable of. This was what they had become in their centuries of silence, while the galaxy had forgotten them, while the Dominion had conquered world after world without opposition. The humans had been waiting, building, preparing for this moment. The Dominion interceptors that had been pursuing the Karathi convoy turned back to join the battle. They swarmed the unyielding like insects attacking a giant, firing everything they had, trying to find some weakness in the human ship's defenses. The unyielding simply swatted them out of the sky. point defense systems that Thyra had not even noticed activated, filling the space around the ship with a web of fire that no interceptor could penetrate. Dozens of small ships died in seconds, their wreckage scattering across the void. Admiral Sexron's flagship, the heavy cruiser Dominion's Wrath, tried to run. Its engines flared as it turned away from the battle, accelerating toward the edge of the system. The unyielding did not let it go. A single shot from the human ship's main weapon, a massive rail cannon mounted along the vessel's spine, crossed the distance between them in an instant. It struck the Dominion's Wrath amidships, punched through both shields and armor, and tore the ship in half. Admiral Sexron died without ever understanding what had happened. The battle was over in less than 15 minutes. 18 Dominion warships had been reduced to floating debris. Unyielding drifted among the wreckage, its hull scorched in places but otherwise undamaged on the bridge of the Endless Hope. No one spoke. There were no words for what they had just witnessed. A single ship had destroyed an entire fleet. A species the galaxy had written off as extinct had emerged from the void and proven itself more powerful than anyone had imagined. The comm system crackled and Captain Reyes' voice filled the bridge. Commander Velson, the Dominion threat has been neutralized. My ship will escort your convoy through the nebula to safety. You have my word that no harm will come to your people while you are under our protection. Thyra finally found her voice. Captain Reyes, I do not know how to thank you. You saved us. You saved 40,000 lives. I do not know why you did it, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. There was a pause before Reyes responded. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. Gentler. Do not thank me yet, Commander. Get your people to safety first. We can talk more later. There is much to discuss. Yes, yes, of course we are moving now. The convoy continued toward the nebula. The unyielding fell in alongside them, a vast shadow that blocked out the stars. Its presence should have been frightening. This massive engine of destruction that had just annihilated 18 ships without breaking a sweat, but somehow Thyra found it comforting. For the first time since Velar Prime burned, she felt safe. As the convoy entered the outer edges of the Kessin Nebula, Thyra allowed herself to sit down in her command chair, her body ached with exhaustion. Her mind was reeling from everything that had happened, but beneath the fatigue and the confusion, something else was growing. Curiosity. Who were these humans? Where had they been? Why had they come, and what did they want? She looked at the unyielding on her view screen, its scarred hull illuminated by the nebula's glow, and wondered what secrets it held. The galaxy had thought humans were extinct. The galaxy had been wrong, and Thyra suspected that nothing would ever be the same again. The Kessin Nebula wrapped around the convoy like a protective blanket, purple and gold. Clouds of cosmic dust swirled past the viewports, blocking out the stars and hiding them from any eyes that might be watching. The radiation from the nebula played havoc with long-range sensors, making it impossible for anyone outside to track them. For the first time in weeks, the Karathi refugees could breathe. Thyra had ordered all ships to reduce speed and begin repairs. Convoy would take 3 days to cross the nebula at their current pace, which gave her people time to rest and recover. Medical teams moved between ships, treating the wounded. Engineers worked around the clock to patch damaged systems. Counselors tried to help those whose trauma ran too deep for physical healing, but Thyra herself could not rest. Not yet. There was still the matter of the human ship. The Unyielding maintained a steady position at the rear of the convoy, its massive bulk visible on the aft sensors. Even through the nebula's interference, it had not hailed them since entering the nebula. It simply followed a silent guardian, watching over its charges. Thyra needed answers. Ren, open a channel to the Unyielding. Request a meeting with Captain Reyes. The response came quickly. Commander Velson, Captain Reyes invites you to come aboard the Unyielding at your convenience. Shuttle will be dispatched to collect you if you wish. Thyra did wish very much. An hour later, she was sitting in a human shuttle craft as it crossed the gap between her ship and the Unyielding. The shuttle was small and utilitarian, with seats that were clearly designed for human bodies, 2 arms, 2 legs, similar proportions to Kurthi, but with subtle differences that made the chairs slightly uncomfortable. The pilot was a young human male with pale skin and red hair. He had introduced himself as Lieutenant Chen and had said almost nothing since then. Thyra studied him as they flew, trying to learn what she could about humans from this single example. He seemed ordinary. That was the surprising thing. No strain features, no obvious signs of the technological marvel he represented. He was just a young man doing his job, occasionally checking instruments and making small adjustments to their course. But his ship had destroyed 18 Dominion warships in 15 minutes. His people had hidden from the galaxy for 300 years, building weapons that made the Dominion look like primitives. There was nothing ordinary about that. Shuttle approached the Unyielding, and Thyra got her first close look at the human vessel. It was even more impressive up close. The ship's hull was covered in a material she did not recognize, something dark and metallic that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Sensor arrays and weapon mounts dotted the surface at irregular intervals, each one looking like it had been added when needed rather than planned from the beginning. This was a ship that had evolved over time, growing stronger with each battle, each modification, each hard-won lesson. The shuttle entered a hangar bay near the ship's midsection. As the doors closed behind them, an atmosphere was pumped back in. Thyra saw rows of other shuttles and small craft lined up along the walls. Humans in various uniforms moved between them, performing maintenance and loading supplies. They glanced at her shuttle with curiosity, but no hostility. Lieutenant Chen brought the shuttle to a gentle landing and opened the hatch. This way, Commander. Captain Reyes is waiting for you in the observation lounge. Thyra followed him through the corridors of the Unyielding. What she saw confirmed her first impressions. This was a warship through and through. The corridors were narrow and armored, designed to be easily defended in case of boarding. The lighting was harsh and practical. Every door had manual overrides and emergency seals. There was no decoration, no comfort, nothing that did not serve a purpose. But the crew members she passed seemed happy. Was not the right word. Content perhaps. They moved with purpose and confidence, nodding to each other and to Lieutenant Chen as he led her through the ship. They did not look like people who lived in fear or desperation. They looked like people who knew exactly who they were and what they were fighting for. Observation lounge was located near the top of the ship. It was a large room with a curved transparent wall that looked out into space, or would have if the nebula clouds did not fill most of the view. But even through the purple haze, Thyra could see the lights of the Karathi convoy below them. Captain Alina Reyes stood at the window, her hands clasped behind her back, watching the convoy. She turned as Thyra entered. "Commander Velson, thank you for coming. Thank you for having me, Captain, and thank you again for saving my people." Reyes nodded and gestured toward a pair of chairs near the window. "Please sit. Would you like something to drink? We have water, a few kinds of tea, and something my crew calls coffee that I would not recommend to anyone with fewer than 2 hearts." Despite everything, felt a smile tug at her lips. "Water would be fine." They sat, and a young human woman brought them drinks. Thyra sipped her water and found it surprisingly pure and clean. She had expected recycled ship water to have some taste, but this was better than many natural sources she had tried. "I imagine you have questions," Rahia said. "Many. I do not know where to begin." "Then let me begin for you." Reyes leaned back in her chair, and for the first time, Thyra saw weariness in the human's face. "You want to know where we came from, why we disappeared, why we came back now?" Yes. Reyes was silent for a long moment, staring out at the nebula clouds. When she spoke, her voice was distant, as if she was seeing something far away. 300 years ago, humanity was new to the stars. We had just developed faster than light travel. We were excited, eager, naive. We thought the universe was a place of wonder and opportunity. We reached out to every species we encountered, trying to make friends, trying to build alliances. She paused. "We were fools. What happened?" "The Dominion happened." Reyes, as his voice hardened. "They were not as powerful then as they are now, but they were strong enough. They saw us as weak, primitive, easy prey. They attacked our outer colonies without warning. We called for help. We sent messages to every species we had made contact with, begging for assistance. No one answered." Thyra felt a chill run through her. She knew that feeling. She had felt it herself. Just days ago, the Dominion burned our colonies one by one. Reyes continued. "They killed billions of people, men, women, children. It did not matter to them. We were just animals to be slaughtered. We fought back as best we could, but we were too weak, too disorganized, too trusting. By the time we understood what was happening, it was almost too late." "Almost." Reyes nodded. Slowly, "We had one advantage, one thing the Dominion did not expect. When humans are backed into a corner, when we have nothing left to lose, we become dangerous." The survivors gathered together. They abandoned the colonies they could not defend. They retreated to hidden places, deep space stations, asteroid bases, moons, and systems no one cared about, and they made a decision. What decision? To survive at any cost. Rahia has turned to look directly at Thyra. "We spent the next 300 years in hiding. We watched the galaxy through probes and spy satellites. We saw the Dominion grow stronger, conquer more worlds, enslave more species. We saw other civilizations call for help, just as we had, and we saw no one answer, just as no one had answered us. And while we watched, we built." She gestured around at the ship that surrounded them. "We built ships, weapons, technology. We poured everything we had into making ourselves strong enough that no one would ever prey on us again. We made advances that would have been impossible if we had remained part of the galactic community, because we had no rules, no treaties, no limitations, just the single-minded goal of survival. Why did you not return sooner? Thyra asked. If you became this powerful, why did you not come back and fight the Dominion? Because we were not ready. Ray's voice was heavy with regret. Building ships takes time. Training crews takes time. Learning how to fight a war across hundreds of star systems takes time, and we needed to be sure. We could not afford to reveal ourselves too soon, before we were strong enough to finish what we started. If we had failed, the Dominion would have hunted us to extinction. So what changed? Why now? Ray's was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared in the air between them. It was Thyra's distress call, her own face exhausted and desperate, pleading for help that she had been sure would never come. I was patrolling the edge of the nebula when this came through. Ray said quietly, your message, your voice. I heard you say that no one was coming, that your people were going to die, that the galaxy had abandoned you. She paused, and I remembered what it felt like to be you, what it felt like to scream into the void and hear only silence, what it felt like to watch your people die while the universe looked away. Ray's voice cracked slightly. I remembered my grandmother's stories about the burning times, what we call the Dominion attacks on our early colonies. I remembered my father telling me about the day they fled Earth's last colony, running from ships that were faster and stronger and showed no mercy. She looked at Thyra with eyes that burned with something Thyra could not quite name, rage perhaps, or sorrow, or both. I could not save my ancestors. I could not save the billions who died before I was born, but I could save you. So I did. Thyra did not know what to say. She had expected many explanations, strategic calculations, political maneuvering, hidden agendas. She had not expected this. This was personal. This was pain that had been carried for generations, finally finding an outlet. Captain, she said slowly, you said you needed to be strong enough to finish what you started. What does that mean? What are you planning? Rahia stood and walked to the observation window. She looked out at the convoy below. 40,000 Karathi lives that had been saved by human intervention. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy through fear for too long. She said they have conquered because no one has been willing to stand against them. No one has been strong enough. No one has been angry enough. She turned back to Thyra. We are both. You mean to fight them, really fight them, not just one battle but a war? Yes, you cannot win, even with all your power. The Dominion spans hundreds of worlds. They have thousands of ships, billions of soldiers. One vessel, no matter how advanced, cannot defeat an empire. Ray smiled. It was a thin smile, but there was no humor in it, only cold determination. Who said anything about one vessel? She pressed another button on her device, and the hologram changed. Instead of Thyra's distress call, it now showed a star map. Thyra recognized the region, the outer rim of the galaxy, far from Dominion space, far from any major civilization. But the map was covered in tiny dots of light, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. What am I looking at? Thyra asked. Human ships, human stations, human colonies. This is what we have Been building for 300 years. Rays pointed at one dot, then another. Shipyards capable of producing dreadnoughts. Like the unyielding in months instead of years, military armies that have trained. Generations of soldiers who have never known anything but preparation for war. Research facilities that have developed weapons the Dominion cannot even imagine, and people, millions of people, who have been waiting their entire lives for the moment when we finally come out of the shadows. Thyra stared at the map, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. This was not a single ship coming to help. This was an entire civilization. A civilization that had been hiding in plain sight, building its strength, biding its time. The unyielding was not supposed to engage the Dominion yet. Rahia said, "We have a plan, a timeline, but when I heard your distress call," she shook her head. "I could not wait. I could not let your people die the way mine did, so I acted on my own. Will you be punished for that?" Ray shrugged. "Probably, but it does not matter. What matters is that your people are safe, and what matters is that the Dominion now knows we exist. They will tell others, word will spread. And when it does," she smiled again, "and this time there was something fierce in it. When it does, everything changes." Thyra stood and walked to the window beside Ray's. Together they looked out at the convoy drifting through the purple clouds of the nebula. "What happens now?" Thyra asked. "Now we get your people to safety. There is a planet on the other side of the nebula. Sanctuary we call it. It is hidden from Dominion sensors, and we have been preparing it for refugees for years. Your people can live there, rebuild there, recover there, and after that—" Ray's was quiet for a moment. "After that we go to war, the real war, the one we have been preparing for since before either of us was born. The Dominion thought they destroyed humanity 300 years ago. They were wrong, and now they are going to find out exactly how wrong they were." Thyra thought about her home world, about Velar Prime now. Nothing but ash and glass, about the 9 billion people who had died there, about the 40,000 survivors who now depended on her. "The Dominion destroyed my world," she said quietly. "They killed almost everyone I have ever known or loved. If you are going to fight them, really fight them, then I want to help." Ray's looked at her with something like respect. "We would be honored to have you, Commander, and your people, if they choose to join us." She held out her hand, a human gesture of agreement. Thyra remembered from the old records. "Together, we can show the Dominion what happens when they push too far." Thyra took the offered hand. Together she agreed. Outside the window, the Karathi convoy continued its journey through the nebula. Ahead of them lay sanctuary and safety and the chance to rebuild. Behind them lay the wreckage of 18 Dominion ships and the beginning of something that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. The humans had returned, and they had not come to hide any longer. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the grand halls of the Dominion High Council, Supreme Commander Vexto sat on his throne and listened to the reports with growing disbelief. 18 warships destroyed, an entire fleet wiped out, Admiral Sexthron, one of his most trusted commanders, killed along with his crew by a single ship. "This is impossible," Vexto growled. He was old for a V, nearly 400 cycles, and he had spent most of those cycles building the Dominion into the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known. He had crushed rebellions, conquered civilizations and broken the spirits of countless species. Nothing had ever challenged him like this. Supreme Commander, said his intelligence chief, a nervous creature named Thrin, we have analyzed all available data from the battle. The reports are accurate. Single vessel of unknown design engaged our fleet and destroyed it completely. And you are telling me this vessel was human? Vex Torrek's voice dripped with contempt. The humans were vermin. We exterminated them 300 years ago. It appears we did not exterminate all of them. Supreme Commander, Vex Torx slammed his fist against the arm of his throne. The sound echoed through the council chamber, and several advisors flinched. Find them, he ordered. Send probes to every corner of the galaxy. Find where these humans have been hiding. I want their location, their numbers, their capabilities, everything. Yes, Supreme Commander, but there is another matter. Thrin hesitated. Karathi refugees, they escaped into the Kessin Nebula with the human ship. Our sensors cannot track them. Then send a fleet to the other side of the nebula. When they emerge, destroy them, and this time use overwhelming force. Thrin bowed and retreated. Vexter remained on his throne, his 6 eyes staring at nothing. Humans, he remembered them vaguely from his youth, a minor species barely worth noticing. They had died easily in those early days. Their colonies had burned. Their people had screamed, and the galaxy had watched and done nothing. That was how the universe worked. The strong survived and the weak perished, but somehow, impossibly, the humans had survived. Not just survived, grown strong enough to destroy an entire fleet for the first time in century. Supreme Commander Vex Talk felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear, far across the galaxy in the hidden depths of human space. The high command of the Terran Alliance gathered for an emergency session. The command center was located deep within an asteroid field, protected by layers of defensive systems and sensor jamming. That would have required a fleet to penetrate. Holographic displays showed tactical information from dozens of sectors. Officers moved between stations, monitoring the vast network of ships and stations that humanity had built over 3 centuries. At the center of the room, 5 people sat around a circular table. These were the leaders of the Terran Alliance, the men and women who had guided humanity's secret rebuilding and who now faced the consequences of Captain Reyes's unauthorized action. Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane, the oldest among them, spoke first. His voice was calm, but there was iron beneath the calm. Captain Reyes has exposed our existence to the Dominion. 300 years of secrecy undone in 15 minutes. She saved 40,000 lives, replied General Sarah Chen, commander of the Alliance's ground forces. Kurtha lives, but lives nonetheless. I cannot condemn her for that. Neither can I, admitted Admiral Kane, but the fact remains our timeline has been disrupted. We plan to reveal ourselves on our terms when our fleet was at full strength. Now the Dominion knows we exist and they will come hunting. Let them hunt, said Director James Ockefer, head of Alliance Intelligence. His skin was dark, his eyes sharp, and his reputation for ruthlessness was well earned. We have been preparing for this for generations. The Dominion has no idea where we are or how many ships we have. By the time they find us, we will be ready, will we? The question came from Admiral Yuki Tanaka. the youngest member of the High Command. She was barely 50 years old, but she had risen through the ranks with a tactical brilliance that had earned her a seat at this table. The Unyielding is one of our most advanced ships, and it was almost damaged in that engagement against a larger fleet, against the full might of the Dominion. Can we really win? We do not need to win, Admiral Kane said quietly. Not at first. We just need to survive long enough for others to join us. The room fell silent. This was the heart of the Alliance's strategy, the thing they had been working toward for 300 years. The galaxy is not empty, Kane continued. There are dozens of species living under the Dominion's boot. Hundreds of worlds that would rise up if they thought they had a chance. Syndicate, the Vet Confederacy, even the Galactic Accord, they are all afraid. They have seen what happens to those who resist. But if we can show them that resistance is possible, if we can prove that the Dominion can be hurt, can be defeated, they might find their courage. General Chen finished. Exactly. The Kurathy convoy was a beginning. 40,000 refugees who will tell everyone they meet what happened. A human ship came out of nowhere and destroyed an entire Dominion fleet. That story will spread. It will give people hope, and hope is the one thing the Dominion has never been able to destroy. The High Command considered this in silence. Finally, Director Akefer spoke. What about Captain Reyes? What do we do with her? Admiral Kane sighed. She disobeyed orders. She acted without authorization. She compromised decades of planning. He paused. She also demonstrated exactly the values that we have been trying to preserve all these years: courage, compassion, the willingness to act when others will not. So we promote her. Give her a task force, send her back out there to make more trouble for the Dominion. If she is going to force our hand, then we might as well make use of her talents. Slow nods moved around the table. It was decided. 3 days after the battle, the Kurathy convoy emerged from the far side of the Kessin Nebula. The planet that awaited them took Thyra's breath away. Sanctuary was beautiful. It was a world of blue oceans and green continents with 2 small moons orbiting in the distant sky. It looked like something from a dream, a paradise hidden at the edge of known space. We found it about 200 years ago, Captain Reyes explained as the convoy approached. She was standing beside Thyra on the bridge of the Endless Hope, watching the planet grow larger on the view screen. An uninhabited world with perfect conditions for life. No intelligent species, no Dominion presence, nothing to attract attention. We have been terraforming the more barren regions and building infrastructure for decades, preparing for the day when we would need to offer shelter to refugees. You were planning this even before you revealed yourselves. We were planning for everything. Reyes smiled slightly. One thing we learned from our past is that hope is not enough. You need preparation, you need resources, and you need safe places for people to run to when things go wrong. As the convoy entered orbit, Thyra saw the evidence of human preparation everywhere. Space stations circled the planet, ready to receive ships for repairs and resupply. Shuttle traffic moved constantly between the surface and orbit. On the ground, she could see the lights of cities, not large but established, permanent. The Kurathy were not the first refugees to come here. They would not be the last. Landing was a blur of activity, human Ground crews guided the Kirati shuttles. To prepared landing zones, medical teams were waiting to receive the wounded. Social workers and translators helped the exhausted refugees find temporary housing. Everything was organized. Efficient professional, Thyra walked among her people as they took their first steps on solid ground in weeks. She saw children laughing as they felt gravity again. She saw elderly Kiri weeping with relief. She saw families clinging to each other, grateful to be alive. And everywhere she saw humans. Humans offering food and water, humans carrying luggage, humans kneeling down to speak to frightened children. They were not warriors here, they were helpers, caretakers, friends. This was the other face of humanity, the face that matched the fury she had seen in battle. Captain Reyes found her standing on a hilltop overlooking the refugee settlement. As the sun began to set, the sky turned shades of orange and pink that reminded Thyra painfully of our prime. Your people will be safe here, Rhea said, standing beside her. We have supplies for years, room to expand, and defenses that will keep the Dominion out. I know, I can see it. Thyra paused. I have been thinking about what you said about fighting back, about war, and I want to do it. I want to make the Dominion pay for what they did to my people, but more than that. She turned to face Reyes. I do not want anyone else to go through what we went through. I do not want another species to watch their home world burn while the galaxy stays silent. Reyes nodded slowly. That is exactly why we are doing this, not for revenge, though. I will not pretend revenge is not part of it. We are doing this so that no one has to call for help and hear only silence ever again. How do we start? We have already started. The story of what happened at the nebula is spreading. My superiors were angry at first, but they have come around. They are sending more ships to patrol Dominion space, looking for opportunities to help, to fight, to show that the Dominion is not invincible. More ships. How many? Reyes smiled. Enough to make the Dominion very nervous, and we are not going to be alone. Already we have received messages from resistance groups on a dozen Dominion-occupied worlds. They have heard the story. They want to know if it is true. They want to know if there is really a force strong enough to challenge the empire that has crushed them for so long. What did you tell them? The truth. We told them that humanity is back and we are not going anywhere. Over the following weeks, the shape of things to come became clearer. Human ships appeared in Dominion space with increasing frequency, striking at supply convoys, ambushing patrol fleets, and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Each attack was surgical, precise, devastating, and each attack sent a message. The Dominion was not unstoppable. The message spread on occupied worlds. People began to whisper about the humans, the forgotten species that had risen from extinction to challenge the greatest empire in the galaxy. Some whispered with hope, others whispered with fear, but everyone whispered. The Dominion responded with rage. They sent fleets to hunt the human ships, but the humans knew their territory better and had centuries of experience in hiding. They tightened their grip on occupied worlds, but the tighter they squeezed, the more resentment they created, and in the shadows, alliances began to form. Delegation from the Syndicate arrived at Sanctuary 1 month after the Karathi refugees. They were nervous, suspicious, unwilling to commit to anything, but they came. That alone was significant. The Syndicate had stayed neutral throughout the Dominion's rise, too afraid to resist and too proud to submit. Now they were asking questions, listening, considering the VTH. Confederacy was not far behind. They had split from the Dominion centuries ago, but had never been strong enough to challenge their former masters. Now they sent secret envoys to meet with human commanders, exploring the possibility of cooperation. Even the Galactic Accord, that toothless assembly of frightened species that had refused to help anyone for generations, began to stir. Some members argued that the humans were dangerous, that supporting them would bring the Dominion's wrath down on everyone. Others argued that this was the chance they had been waiting for, a real opportunity to break free from Dominion terror. Captain Reyes watched it all unfold from the bridge of the Unyielding. She had been given command of a small task force, 5 ships that roamed the borders of Dominion space, looking for opportunities to strike in. To help, Commander Thyrevels was with her. The Karathi officer had been given a commission in the Alliance Navy, the first non-human to hold such a position. She was learning human tactics, human technology, human ways of war, and she was teaching the humans about the Dominion in return. They were an effective team. The Karathi understood how the Dominion thought, where their weaknesses were, how they could be hurt. The humans had the firepower and the fury to exploit those weaknesses. Together, they were becoming a legend. New contact, reported the Unyielding Sensor Officer one evening. Dominion Patrol Fleet, 6 ships. They are on an intercept course with a civilian transport. Looks like refugees. Reyes and Thyra exchanged glances. Who's refugees? Thyra asked, reading their transponder. Now they are Valkyrie. Their home world was just conquered by the Dominion last month. Estimated survivors aboard 12,000 souls fleeing for their lives. The same story that had played out 1,000 times across the galaxy. The same story that had played out for Thyra and LT Unk and GT's people. Can we reach them in time? Reyes asked. It will be close, Captain, very close. Reyes looked at Thyra. The Karathi woman nodded. All ships maximum speed. Reyes ordered. We have people to save. The task force leaped forward, racing toward the distant point of light where 12,000 strangers were about to discover what 40,000 Kurthai had already learned. No one calls for help unanswered. Not anymore. 6 months had passed since the day a human warship rose from the Kesson Nebula and changed the galaxy forever. Commander Thyron stood on the observation deck of the Unyielding, watching the stars drift past. So much had changed since that desperate day when she had sent her last distress call into the void, certain that no one would answer. She was not the same person she had been then. The fear that had gripped her heart had been replaced by something else, purpose, determination, and a fierce hope that burned brighter with each passing day. The door behind her opened and Captain Alina Reyes walked in. The human commander moved to stand beside Thyra at the window. 2 warriors who had become something closer to sisters in the months of fighting together. You should be sleeping, Raya said. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. I could not sleep. Too much on my mind. Thyra turned to face her. Is it true what they are saying about the Dominion fleet? Reyes nodded slowly. It is true. Our scouts confirmed it this morning. The Dominion is gathering a massive fleet at the Corva sector. Over 200 warships. the largest force they have assembled in a century. They are coming for us, they are coming for all of us, everyone who has defied them, everyone who has given people hope. Ray's voice was calm, but Thyra could see the tension in her shoulders. Supreme Commander Vextoric is leading the fleet personally. He wants to make an example. He wants to crush us so completely that no one will ever dare to resist again. Thyra thought about everything that had happened in the past 6 months, the rescues, the battles, the growing alliance of species that had found the courage to stand together. The Syndicate had finally joined forces with the Alliance. The Vet Confederacy had committed a fleet of their own. Even some members of the Galactic Accord had found their backbone and contributed ships. It was not enough. Against 200 Dominion warships, their combined fleet was still outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. Can we win? Thyra asked quietly. Ray's was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was honest. I do not know, but I know that we have to try. If we run, if we hide, then everything we have built will fall apart. The Dominion will hunt us down one by one. Alliance will shatter and the galaxy will go back to what it was before. Place where the weak are crushed and no one dares to help. Then we fight. Then we fight. Rahia has turned to look at Thyra. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that it has been an honor serving with you. You are one of the finest officers I have ever known, human or otherwise. Thyra felt her throat tight. The honor has been mine. Captain, you saved my people. You gave us a second chance. I will never forget that. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The next day, the combined fleet of the Alliance and its partners gathered at the edge of the Corva sector. Thyra had never seen so many ships in one place. Human dreadnoughts floated alongside sleek Syndicate cruisers and heavy vest battleships. Smaller vessels from a dozen other species filled the gaps between them, each one representing a people who had decided that they would rather die fighting than live on their knees. From the bridge of the Unyielding, Thyra could see the Dominion fleet approaching in the distance. 200 warships arranged in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming with menace. At their center was the largest ship she had ever seen, the Dominion Eternal. Supreme Commander Vextor's personal flagship. It was a mountain of metal and firepower, larger than any vessel in the Alliance fleet. All ships report ready, announced the Unyielding communications officer. The fleet is awaiting your orders, Captain. Ray stood at the center of the bridge, her back straight, her eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. She had been promoted to Commodore after her actions at Sanctuary, but she still commanded the Unyielding. It was her ship. It was where she belonged. Open a channel to all ships, she ordered. The channel crackled to life. Thousands of crew members across dozens of ships waited to hear what their commander would say. Ray spoke. This is Commodore Alina, Rays of the Terran Alliance. In a few minutes we are going to fight the largest battle in living memory. Many of us will not survive. I will not lie to you about that. Dominion is powerful and they are determined to destroy us. She paused, letting her words sink in. But I want you to remember something. The Dominion has been conquering the galaxy for centuries. They have crushed species after species, world after world. They believe they are invincible. They believe that fear is stronger than courage, that tyranny is stronger than Freedom, today we prove them wrong. Her voice grew stronger, filled with conviction. We are not fighting for territory, we are not fighting for resources, we are fighting for the simple idea that no one should have to call for help and hear only silence. We are fighting for every species that has ever been crushed by the dominions. Boot, we are fighting for the future. Future where the galaxy is not ruled by fear. Thyra watched Rahia speak and felt something stir in her chest. Pride, hope, determination. 300 years ago my ancestors called for help and no one answered. They died alone in the dark, abandoned by a galaxy that was too afraid to act. I carry that memory with me every day. It is the reason I fight. It is the reason we all fight. Raises voice rang like steel. Today we answer, not just for ourselves but for everyone who has ever suffered in silence. Today we show the Dominion what happens when you push too far. Today we show the galaxy that there is still something worth fighting for. She drew a breath. All ships engage. The battle for the Corva sector began. The two fleets crashed together like waves meeting in a storm. Weapons fire filled the void. Plasma beams, rail cannons, missiles, torpedoes. Ships exploded, ships died. The darkness of space was lit up by 1,000 individual fires. The unyielding led the Alliance charge, its massive hull absorbing punishment that would have destroyed lesser ships, its weapons carved through Dominion cruisers like a blade through cloth. Around it, human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked even their allies, but the Dominion was not without teeth. Their ships were powerful, their crews well-trained, and their commander was one of the most experienced warriors. The galaxy, slowly, relentlessly, they began to push back. Thyra watched from her station as friendly ships were destroyed one after another. A syndicate cruiser vanished in a ball of fire. Vet battleship was torn apart by concentrated fire from 3 Dominion destroyers. The smaller ships were being picked off, their courage no match for the overwhelming firepower they faced. We are losing, she said quietly. Reyes did not respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the tactical display, watching the battle unfold. Then she saw something that made her smile. Look, she said, pointing at the display. Thyra looked. At first she did not understand what she was seeing. Then she did, and her heart stopped. Ships were appearing at the edge of the sensor range. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They were coming from every direction, emerging from faster than light travel in waves that seemed endless. Human ships, more than had ever imagined existed. The reserves, Rahia said. High Command has been holding them back, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the Dominion to commit everything. She laughed, a fierce, wild sound. And now they are here. New arrivals were not alone. Mixed among the human ships were vessels of other designs, ships from species that had not been part of the Alliance until this very moment, ships that had been waiting, watching, trying to decide if the Resistance had a real chance. Now they had their answer. The tide of battle turned. What had been a desperate last stand became something else. Coordinated assault that struck the Dominion from every angle. The perfect formation that had seemed so intimidating shattered as enemy ships tried to respond to threats coming from all directions. Supreme Commander Vex Torque's voice crackled over the open channel, filled with rage and disbelief. This is impossible. Where did they all come from? Destroy them, destroy them All but his orders could not be followed. The Dominion fleet was fragmenting, breaking apart under the relentless pressure. Ships that had never known defeat were being destroyed by enemies they had dismissed as insignificant. The unyielding cut through the chaos toward the Dominion. Eternal, Reyes had one goal now ending this battle once and for all. All weapons target the flagship. She ordered full power. The unyielding unleashed everything it had. Rail cannons hammered the Dominion. Eternal shields, energy weapons carved through its armor. Missiles found weak points and exploited them with deadly precision. The flagship fought back, its weapons tearing chunks out of the unyielding's hull. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Crew members were thrown from their stations, but the human ship kept coming, kept firing, kept fighting. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, reported the damage control officer. Shields at 12%, keep firing. Reyes ordered. Her voice was steady, unbreakable. The Dominion. Eternal shields collapsed, its engines failed. Its weapons went dark, but it was still. They're still alive, Commodore Thyra said. They're trying to withdraw. If we let them go, we are not letting them go. Reyes turned to her weapons. Officer, main gun, target their bridge. The unyielding spine-mounted rail cannon charged with a sound like thunder. Building in the distance, the massive weapon aligned with the crippled flagship. Reyes opened a channel to the Dominion. Eternal Supreme Commander Vexstock, this is Commodore Elena Reyes of the Terran Alliance. 300 years ago, your Empire tried to exterminate my people. You failed. Today your fleet is destroyed and your flagship is crippled. I am giving you one chance to surrender. One chance to end this without more death. Take it. There was silence on the channel. Then Vexstock's voice came through, twisted with hatred. Surrender. To humans, never. You are animals. Vermin. I would rather die than bow to creatures like you. Reyes nodded slowly. I hoped you would say something like that. It makes this easier. She gave the order. The unyielding's main gun fired. The shot crossed the distance between the two ships in an instant and struck the Dominion. Eternal's bridge. The flagship broke apart, splitting into pieces that tumbled through space like leaves in a wind. Supreme Commander Vex Toke, the architect of the Dominion's reign of terror, died without seeing the empire he had built crumble around him. But he should have seen what came next. Across the Dominion, the news spread like wildfire. The Supreme Commander was dead. The great fleet was destroyed. The humans, the forgotten species, the extinct vermin had beaten them. Rebellions erupted on 100 occupied world. Species that had been crushed into submission for generations rose up and threw off their chains. Dominion's remaining fleets, scattered and leaderless, could not respond to threats coming from every direction. The empire that had ruled the galaxy through fear collapsed in weeks, not because it was destroyed from without, but because the fear that had held it together evaporated in the face of something stronger. Hope. 1 month after the Battle of Corva, Thyra stood on the surface of Sanctuary, looking up at a sky full of stars. The war was not over. Not completely. There were still Dominion holdouts, still battles to be fought, still work to be done, but the worst was behind them. The galaxy was changing, and this time it was changing for the better. Captain Reyes, Commodore Reyes, now Admiral Reyes, walked up to stand beside her. You are thinking deep thoughts, Reyes observed. I am thinking about what you said the first day we Met about how you could not let my people die the way yours did, about how you remembered what it felt like to call for help and hear only silence. Thyra paused. The Dominion is gone now. The galaxy is free. What will you do next? What will humanity do? Ray has considered the question, the same thing we have always done. We will watch. We will wait, and when someone calls for help, we will answer. She smiled, a real smile, warm and human. That is who we are now. That is who we choose to be. Thyra nodded slowly. She thought about her people rebuilding on Sanctuary. She thought about the other species finding their way in a galaxy without the Dominion's shadow. She thought about the future, uncertain but full of possibility. My people owe you everything, she said. I owe you everything. How can we ever repay that? Ray is turned to look at her, and there was something gentle in her fierce eyes. Do the same for someone else. Someday, somewhere, there will be a species that needs help, a people calling out into the void, hoping someone will hear. When that day comes, answer, pass it on. She paused. That is how you repay us. That is how we make sure no one ever has to call for help and hear only silence. Again, Thyra felt tears building in her eyes. She blinked them back. I promise, she said, on my life and the lives of all my people, we will answer. I know you will. They stood together under the alien stars of Sanctuary, two warriors from different species, bound by something stronger than blood. Above them, ships moved through the darkness. Human ships, Karathi ships, ships from a dozen other species that had found their courage and joined the fight. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of people who had learned a simple truth: no one has to face the darkness alone, not anymore. In the void, someone was always listening. Someone was always ready to help, and when the call came, they would rise from the darkness to answer, just as humanity had done, just as they would always